Good morning. I am State Representative Angela Orr. I am from Central Texas. If you drove down from Dallas-Fort Worth, you probably passed through my district. I'm where the 35s come together in Hill County, Hillsborough. It's encouraging and heartwarming to be among so many passionate and strong believers after a tumultuous but very successful legislative session or sessions. Through hard work and collaboration between faith leaders like yourselves and conservative lawmakers, we passed many strong pro-family and pro-faith bills this year. As the House sponsor for Senate Bill 8, the Texas Women's Privacy Act, I was especially proud to see Governor Abbott sign that bill into law on Monday of this week. As a mother and a grandmother and a Christian, I was honored to fight on behalf of 15 million Texas women and in defense of 2.7 million girls in our public schools who have a God-given right to privacy and safety in places where they're at their most vulnerable. Thank you, Senator Middleton, and everyone here involved in getting this monumental legislation over the line. Lastly, I want to celebrate the passage of SB 10, which puts 10 commandments back into each and every classroom in Texas. I purchased posters for over 40 school districts in my House district, which was roughly 2,400 classrooms, and we just finished delivering them to all 7 counties across my district. I've met with teachers and I have met with parents, and we have heard encouraging stories in just the short time that they've been up. It's starting conversations at school and at home, and I was so happy to be a part of that. Thank you, Senator King and Representative Noble, for your leadership on that initiative. Now, I am grateful for the opportunity to introduce participants for our next panel. Our moderator is Michelle Evans. Michelle is a fierce advocate for families and freedoms in Texas. She currently serves as chairman of the Williamson County Republican Party and is the political director for Texans for Vaccine Choice. Both roles allow her to engage with legislators at the Capitol in support of conservative Republican values and priorities. Kylee Alons is a former Division I collegiate swimmer for North Carolina State University. Over the course of her career, she earned 2 NCAA national championships, 31 All-American honors, was a U.S. Olympic trials semifinalist. Following her athletic success, Kylee became an advocate for women's sports and privacy in female spaces after competing at the 2022 NCAA D1 Williams Swimming and Diving Championships, where she raced against a male athlete, Leah Thomas. She works professionally as a data scientist and is a volunteer leader for an athlete ministry at North Carolina State. Payton McNabb is an independent woman sports ambassador. McNabb is a 3-sport high school athlete from North Carolina who was severely injured by a male on a women's volleyball court. She's worked alongside independent women to share her personal experience of competing against a biological male athlete and how her life was forever changed following an injury during the game. Now McNabb is turning tragedy into triumph and using her voice to advocate for female athletes' safety and the need to keep women's sports female. McNabb was knocked unconscious following a forceful blow to the head from a volleyball spike by a biological male playing on the opposing women's team. The sheer impact of the ball has left McNabb with significant long-term physical and mental effects, including impaired vision, partial paralysis on her right side, balance issues, anxiety, and depression. McNabb first testified before the North Carolina General Assembly in April of 2023 to advocate for the passage of the Fairness in Women's Sports Bill. During her testimony, McNabb said, quote, "I'm here for every biological female behind me, my little sister, my cousins, my teammates. Allowing biological males to compete against biological females is dangerous. I may be the first one to come before you with an injury, But if this doesn't pass, I won't be the last, end quote. Since Payton's life-altering injury at the hands of a male in women's sports, she's made waves advocating for women's fairness and safety around the country. She shared her personal experience of competing against a male athlete and how her life was forever changed following an injury during that game. Her passion in speaking out to keep women's sports female make her a powerful voice in the movement of brave women fighting for common sense. She has gained national attention for her advocacy and has joined President Trump as his guest at a joint address of Congress where he recognized her bravery. Please join me in welcoming our panelists.
Thank you, Representative Orr. I wanted to also mention that Payton and I have something in common. We both work with independent women. So Independent Women's Network and Forum, it's a nationwide women-run conservative think tank based out of DC, but we have chapters all over the place, and I'm a Round Rock chapter chair. I'm kind of an unusual one in that I don't do any meetings or anything like that, but I do a lot of advocacy on their behalf, and that's where our lives kind of intermingled. As Representative Orr said, I am the chairman of the Williamson County Republican Party, so shout out to our county judge as well as a bunch of precinct chairs who are in the crowd. And I've been really proud to work across the last 10 years with Texas Values, particularly on the issue of women and girls' safety, privacy, and dignity. In this past legislative session or sessions, we had some incredible wins, but they started stacking up a few years ago with Save Girls Sports, then Save Women's Sports, and then this year we had Defining Man and Woman in Statute by Ellen Troxclair, HB 229, and then in the second special session, finally passing the Women's Privacy Act. Huge, huge win. And I want to direct you guys to a page on the Texas Values website. So if you go to txvalues.org, you can access the Women's Bill of Rights, also known as the What is a Woman Bill. And there's a microsite for that, so you can learn more about it and what it did. But I want to turn to our young women here on the panel and talk to you guys about what was the genesis of your involvement in this movement. So Payton, how did this start for you, the invasion of your spaces, the invasion of your sports?
Yeah, so this all started, we just passed the anniversary of 3 years ago since my injury. It was a high school volleyball game, and I was playing against a man on the other team. We didn't know what to do, like our hands were tied, and it's really different when you're actually in the situation versus what you would say if you were. So coming from rural North Carolina where I'd never even seen this kind of thing before, I had no idea what this meant. We were very confused, and it was just, I guess confusion is the best way to put it. It was really weird, and we didn't really know how to go about it. And for that to happen to me out of anyone, I felt like it was really the Lord that put me there, and he had a mission for me, and I definitely tried to run from it at first. I was really scared about all of this stuff. I didn't know what I was really doing, but I did know that what happened to me that day on the court was absolutely ridiculous, and I should have never been put in that position to begin with. So I thought, sharing my story, maybe that could help at least one other girl in my state. I would have never thought that 3 years later I would be here. And what Michelle was saying, IW, Independent Women, has done such an incredible job with elevating my story and all these other women who I've gotten to meet in this process. So I think, from the beginning, I was 17 years old. I got completely knocked out by this dude on the other side of the net, and I've never fully recovered from it still, and the doctors don't know if I ever will. So I think that's what's really pushed me from the beginning, just having the common knowledge that shouldn't have happened in the first place.
And Kylee, you have not a similar story as far as the injury, but you did compete with Will Thomas and Austinite, so sorry about that. But can you tell us a little bit about how you came to this movement?
Yeah, so a lot of people have heard about the 2022 NCAA Swimming and Diving Championships. That happened because obviously it was the first time I've experienced it, and the first time I think at an NCAA meet where a male athlete was invited to compete with the women and stole lanes from women. This is a meet, elite meet. Many Olympians get their launch from this meet. Names like Reagan Smith, Kate Douglas, Katie Ledecky, they've all been to this meet. It's a huge deal. I was also invited to this meet, was an elite level athlete, and knew that going into that meet, I was gonna have to face a man. My defeat was written in biology. I knew I had no chance against him in my race. And so going to this meet, I was extremely stressed, extremely anxious, but I didn't know that my first interaction would actually just be in passing in the locker room. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to be changing in front of a man, and that just sent me over the edge. I was just covering myself, sheltering myself in the locker room like every other woman there who was like, what is going on? Why are we not being protected? I eventually handled it by literally changing in a storage closet. And people like to joke and say that I was forced into a closet, but in reality, I was thankful to be in that closet, even though it was like very dark. And I was like, okay, I can finally prepare for my races and not be so uncomfortable on edge in this locker room. Seeing him win the 500 freestyle on the first day was unbelievable. I wanted to just run out of the building. I couldn't believe that no one was standing up for us. I couldn't believe that the NCAA had made a spectacle of women's sports by allowing a male athlete to compete there. And on the last day, my time was up, or my time was to compete against him as well. And I was just scraped it into the finals, just thankful to get a spot, but knew that there were other women that did not get a second swim. Reika Georgi, one of the first women to speak out about this, she wrote a letter to the NCAA right after the meet. Her last race, she was 17th in the prelims. Thomas was in her spot. She never got a second swim. Her last swim of her entire collegiate career. Just imagine what that's like. Many women that I've talked to, including myself, just very troubled, even traumatized from the experience in the locker room after that. And that is what has compelled me to keep speaking out about this.
Thank you for doing that. So you said you just passed the 3-year anniversary of your injury. I think a lot of people saw that video. It went viral where you were hit with the ball on the head very forcefully. So since that day, and since the video kind of made it through the ecosphere, what have you been doing as far as propelling these policies forward that would have protected you had they been law at that time?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is my younger sister who plays 3 sports, the same 3 sports I played. The fact that that could have happened to her just absolutely infuriates me. This is why it was kind of hard for me to tell my story at the beginning. I never have wanted to be seen as a victim or people to feel sorry for me. I just think my story should anger you. It should make you want to do something about it to help it not happen anymore. And yeah. So yeah, I've never like felt bad for myself. I've always just been angry about it because you should be. That should anger you because a 17-year-old girl going through that is just, it's absurd. It should have never happened. And I've had a lot of health issues that to this day I still haven't fully gotten over. Thankfully, the Lord has healed me a lot since then. The past couple months have probably been my best months for my health. I feel like I'm actually starting to heal now. But still, there's things that I don't know if they'll ever change. The doctors can't guarantee that they'll ever change. And it just frustrates me. It's just so aggravating because it should have never happened. I could be playing college softball right now. I could be having like a normal 20-year-old life right now. But I know that the Lord had a bigger plan for me, and I'm just going to continue to follow it the best I can in hopes that this never happens again.
Amen. Kylee, you're actually involved in a lawsuit with the NCAA. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where it's at right now?
Yeah, so me and 18 other female athletes have filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. And that for me also just feels like God led me into that, even just speaking out. And then I never knew that I would end up actually filing a lawsuit against a big corporation like the NCAA, who has failed to protect women athletes, who has violated Title IX. And that is the premise of the lawsuit, is at that meet in 2022, and then times after, women are being failed. They are continuing to put women in unsafe, unfair, unprotected private spaces, and many other things. The fallout is just insane. But yeah, we have just filed this lawsuit in last year, 2024, and basically we are just asking for the NCAA to take responsibility for the harm that they have caused and to change their policies to sex-based ruling that fully protects women. Thank you. There's so many things that need to be recognized, and it's just so common sense. Women cannot go into men's sports and dominate like men can come into women's sports. So it's just common sense that female sports spaces need to be protected, and we are just not seeing that right now. And this is all, again, it all comes back to Title IX. They are defying a bill that is, or ruling that is put in place to protect women. And so we need to enforce that. We need to hold them accountable to the very thing that they claim to protect and claim to fall under.
Payton, you and I met at the Texas Capitol this year. You were there with Amy Ichigawa, who all of you will meet tomorrow. But the experience that you and I and Amy had at the Texas Capitol was that you guys were welcomed with open arms, very warmly welcomed and treated almost like a celebrity by some of these lawmakers. And then the following day, they had a surprise hearing for the Women's Privacy Act. And I just want to talk about, in your experience, with the bills passing in Texas this year, how do you think that will impact the rest of the country? I know that you've advocated in other states, but Texas is huge. So what impact does that have?
Yeah, well, Texas has always been a leader to other states. I feel like with these bills, they can kind of inspire other states to take that kind of stand, because I started speaking out for the first time in my state. It's definitely not as awesome as Texas is, and I've said that like a million times. But I still believe that every girl in every state across the nation deserves these basic rights of just privacy, protection, common sense. Like, these are just things that girls shouldn't even be put in this position to begin with. So I think with Texas being strong enough to take stands like this, it can kind of inspire other states to join along and stand up for their girls in their state, because every one of them matters, and it's happening everywhere. I mean, if it's happening in Murphy, North Carolina, it's happening everywhere. So I think that's really been my biggest push, is you think it's not happening. Like, we would have absolutely never guessed that would happen in my town. I can't express that enough. Like, I can't even explain where I live, but like, that doesn't happen there. And so just for that point alone, I'm like, wow, this is really just, it's infecting everything. I mean, not only just the sports. I unfortunately had to deal with this gender ideology push in my university, which drove me out, and I have to study at home now. I got kicked out of my sorority. There was just so many things and it's for a completely other thing, for a guy using the bathroom, and I said something about it. Like, that's just, like, why am I getting punished by my university? They tried to charge me with sexual harassment and get me expelled because I said something about it. And then, of course, no other girl is gonna do that, because they just saw what happened to me. Like, why would you want to do that? So I think it's just important to know it's happening everywhere, and Texas is a leader, and it always has been, and I applaud very much all the lawmakers who take these issues as seriously as they are.
Kylee, you mentioned Title IX a couple of times, and I know that most people in this room understand what Title IX is and what the intent was when it passed. But what would you say is the sort of the state of Title IX in 2025, and whether or not it's improved from 2022?
I think that we are still seeing people defy and violate Title IX. We are still seeing a lack of enforcement of, okay, we see a corporation like the NCAA allowing a man on a women's team. Are we actually going to enforce, say that is in a violation of Title IX? Are we actually going to say, like, that can't happen and immediately stop that athlete from being on the women's team? I think we're seeing still a failure of that. On a more general scale, I'm very hopeful. I'm very thankful for the work of organizations like Texas Values, Icons Women. They're the one that that is mostly involved with the lawsuit, Concern Women for America. So many organizations that are doing such important work to bring light to this issue, to pass bills. Yeah, you can clap. And I'm really thankful for that. And it's very easy for me to get frustrated at the state and still seeing women have to go through what I went through. It makes me very frustrated, and it's hard for me to sometimes celebrate the wins because I just feel like we're just asking for the bare minimum, and I just want the bare minimum, and why can't we just have that? But I have to remind myself that there's so many people doing so much important work, and we're in a new administration that's bringing light to this issue, and President Trump's executive order was a huge step in the right direction. The lawsuit, I really feel like, is the next big thing. If we can have our day in court and we can win against the NCAA, it will set the precedence for so many other organizations. The NCAA is such a huge organization, and they are in charge of so many colleges, and obviously we know they violated. We know that we are on the right side of history when it comes to that lawsuit. So really looking forward to see what happens with that, and really looking forward to seeing a day where I don't have to worry about my future daughter, my nieces having to go through the experience that I went through, because they are fully protected and the laws are fully enforced.
You mentioned the Trump executive order, and not too long after Trump issued that executive order basically saying there are only two genders, male and female, Governor Greg Abbott issued a very similar executive order, and then that was codified into law with HB 229 by Representative Ellen Troxclair. And you talked about the bare minimum. That is literally the bare minimum that we should expect out of all our lawmakers. Man, woman, male, female, mother, father, all of those terms are defined hundreds of thousands of times in state statute, but it's just a collection of letters unless there's a definition attached to it. So these, it's a very simple bill just based on the IWN and Wolf Women's Bill of Rights, but it goes so far to protect women and girls. For example, women in prisons. If you have sex-segregated prisons, it means nothing unless you defined what those sexes are. Transporting juvenile or children who are victims of trafficking or sex abuse, females are supposed to be transported by females, but that means nothing unless you define what female is in statute. So where do we go from here? How do we build on those wins between the What is a Woman Act or Women's Bill of Rights and the Women's Privacy Act? How do we continue to improve in this area?
I think more states need to do what Texas is doing.
Amen.
Women are not protected in all 50 states. I don't know the exact status off the top of my head, but more states need to stand up for women and fully protect them at the high school level, at the college level. And I'm mostly involved at the college level because my story is related to the NCAA, but still at the college level, women are not being protected. So we see after Trump's executive order, actually, the NCAA rewrote their transgender eligibility policy and still did not protect women on the basis of sex. It still is related to the identity. So we see people still just defying these orders that are put in place. And so we need to keep pushing these corporations to make the right decision, to actually own up to what they are causing and actually say, what is a woman and how are we gonna keep this for women only?
Yeah, I agree. I just think, that's what I was saying earlier. I think Texas is a leader, and it will inspire these other states to get it in gear and actually do the things that they either promised or they're talking about. Like, we're actually expecting results, not just talking about it. And I think that's what, unfortunately, we've seen a lot this far, especially with the NCAA when they tried to act like they were on board and they were lying still. So I think that's kind of like a trend that seems to be happening. They think that, not even the bare minimum is good enough. And we're doing just the fact that we're doing all of this just to appease this small group. And that's their argument. It's such a small group. Why are you so worried about it? Why, if it is such a small group, why are you changing all the laws and all the rules to appease only them? And you're putting women in danger to appease that small group, but that small group is growing by the day, and they are dominating in every single field across the board, every sport, every level, every grade, it's all the way through. And it's just important to know that unless people actually start doing what they promise to do, the work is not done.
For such a small group of people, they are certainly extremely loud. From the mother of a female athlete, a volleyball player, who is competing today in a tournament, I just want to thank you so much for everything you've done in response to such a devastating incident. And thank you, Kylee, for being brave enough to speak out when your rights were trampled on in college. I want to redirect everybody again to the txvalues.org website, where you can access the What is a Woman or Women's Bill of Rights portal and learn a little bit more about the legislation, the importance of that legislation, and where we go from here. But for the meantime, thank you very much. You guys have a great day.